Hi, I'm Dr. Ken Owen at Pierce College, here with Music Off the Record. We're going to talk about some music for the next Northwest Sinfonietta concert. If you join us for another of those video clips, we talked a little bit about Robert Schumann, the composer. So now we're going to talk about his piano concerto that will be on our concert. Now, 1841, good year for Robert Schumann. There's been a lot of struggles up to this point, but this is a great year, mostly because the court battles with his father-in-law over being able to marry Clara are over, and he has married Clara, and he just settles in and is obviously at a one of the happiest points in his life, and he begins to compose at an almost inhuman speed, just remarkable the amount of music that he cranks out. So there's he and Clara. There's a picture of them a little bit older. I couldn't find an image of them as newlyweds, but quite happy. So it's a good thing that he was so happy in his marriage and that Clara was so good for him, because he had, again, some of those struggles still going. Bad hand, but good wife. So his hand problems destroyed his own piano performance career. But the good thing was that Clara was among the top pianists in the world. So traveled all over Europe doing concerts. This is an image, I think, from a movie that depicted the Schumanns and of Clara playing. So she would often play Robert's music among the things that she would perform, and again, she was held as one of the greatest in Europe. And so that, of course, helped promote his music and help him to be more well-known. So that first year, when they're first married and Robert is composing like crazy, Clara really encourages him to start writing for orchestra. You see, most of the music he's written up to this point has been for piano, piano and voice, smaller ensembles, not a lot for big orchestra, certainly no major symphonies yet, no piano concertos. So this is when he writes his first couple of symphonies. He also writes a piece for piano and orchestra, doesn't title the concerto, calls it a fantasy, and it's just one movement rather than R3. If you're familiar with the Schumann piano concerto, this may sound a little familiar. Yes, it's the same as the piano concerto. So, but at this point it was just that first movement, and it was just one little movement, the fantasy for piano and orchestra. Clara first tried this piece out at a rehearsal for something else, and they just kind of passed it out and said, let's give this a try. It was a rehearsal with the Gewandhaus Orchestra in Leipzig, and Clara was 2 weeks away from giving birth to their first baby. So I can only imagine trying to play past that. Robert really liked this idea of a one-movement concerto. He thought it should have three sections, like old concertos had three movements, but they would just go one into the next without stop, and he felt the overall breakup of those three sections should create something similar to the old sonata form. Now, sonata form is something for another discussion another day, but it was the form or the structure that the old concertos of Mozart and everybody before then used for the first movement. Was all one tempo, all one piece, but had three sections that made up a sonata form. And so Schumann says, well, one movement concerto, that's all, but it's still going to have three sections, and he's going to vary the tempo a little bit in things, but they're going to go one to the next without stop and then create something similar to that sonata form, and there'll be a cadenza in the third section, again, something similar to the first movement of an old concerto. So to kind of show you, if you can see this image, a little bit of what this would work like, you see at the top the end of the first section, kind of like the end of the first movement, and then you see where it says solo, and there's a new tempo marking, the andante espressivo is into the second section. So a real contrast, almost like the contrast between movements, but all in one still. So here's kind of right through that transition. Now here we get the key change and the tempo change. So quite abrupt shift into this, really more like a second movement of an old concerto, but all still part of the same unit. Now likewise, at the end of that slower section in the middle of this one movement piece, it goes right on to a the third section, which again you can see on the image here, we have another a tempo marking. This says Allegro Tempo 1, so back to our original tempo. You see the letter F there in a lot of the places. If you don't read music, that stands for forte, meaning loud. And we'll hear the piano take off in this virtuosic third movement. If you read music, we're on the second measure of the image. And right here, we'll shift into the third section. So you can really kind of see his concept of a concerto. It's one movement, but it still has that fast, slow, fast feel of the old concerto, but it's a lot shorter because it's just the one movement, and the overall structure has something similar to what one movement used to have. So fast forward for quite a few years, they've moved to Dresden, and Robert Schumann is conducting there, and he's writing symphonies for the orchestra that he conducts, and he wants something a little more substantial for Clara, a little one-movement concerto that he liked so much. He liked it, but it didn't get the same kind of weight that a major concerto had for Clara to perform on a big program. So he decides to write a big, full concerto. So he takes that old fantasy that we were just talking about and pretty much just says, that's my first movement. Very few alterations. Still has the intersections of the contrasting tempi and things like that. And he just adds to that a second and third movements. So there is a full-on stop of the first movement, but you still see his desire to kind of blend things together, that the new second movement and the new third movement connect. One moves right into the other without pause. Second movement, we've already heard the first movement as we listen to the idea of the fantasy. The second movement is very personal, very intimate, a lot like, you know, a string quartet would even be, that kind of dialogue and chamber music feel. So it's a great piece for a little chamber orchestra like the Northwest Sinfonietta to play. You hear that real dialogue between the piano and the strings and the orchestra. And so you also hear this real lyricism, this gift that Robert Schumann has for lyricism. And, you know, we hear the fact that he's a great art song composer. You hear that kind of lyric line, the art song and his little piano pieces that he's so gifted at. You hear him kind of bringing that into the symphony here, this real lyrical narrative. Our third movement, of course, will take off a little bit faster. We're going to hear a transition, I think, where I have this queued up. And it's called a rondo, which means we should expect the opening theme that we hear to keep coming back. So here's the end of that second movement that's going to move right into the third. And takes right off. We'll listen to a little bit more of that in a bit, but just to look at the way that he's tied this in with that composition, which was now 4 or 5 or more years old of the first movement. If you remember how that started, it began with this kind of big chords coming down, kind of sinking down. And then listen again to what he does with the last movement, tying things in. It's kind of that same idea upside down, big chords, and they're going to sweep up instead. descending opposite, the upside down. So as a rondo, we should expect that big sweeping upward gesture that started it off to keep coming back. This is also a especially fun movement to watch the pianist as it really explores the range. You have the keyboard up and down. You'll see the pianist working hard all over the place. So that's our piano concerto. I hope you enjoy it.